Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. We're going to do some brief introductions while folks join. But once again, thank you so much for joining us for this Rural Faculty Voices webinar. We're very excited about it. This is the first of its kind, so we're really, really thankful that you all are really curious to hear from folks that were in your shoes and just how far they've come with what they've done. We have a number of different kind of varieties uh, of interests and fields represented here that we're really excited about. First, we're going to go over a little bit about the STARS College Network. If this is your first time joining the webinar, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. And we're going to go ahead and run through just what the STARS College Network is and the work that we do and that we've been doing in support of rural and small town students. So first and foremost, the STARS College Network is a consortium of 32 schools. It began as 16 schools. It has since doubled in size to 32 schools, happily. As you can see on the screen, the 32 schools are vast and they are varied. So we have flagship state schools. We have HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. We have liberal arts colleges. We have research institutes, Ivy League colleges. So there's just a lot of breadth. And we're all unified in the same mission, which is to better understand and meet the needs of small town and rural students. So we all work together to engage in programming and outreach, and really do more to help students that want to make their way to college, whether it's one of our 32 schools or otherwise. We're really interested in helping students find their way to their college aspirations if that is what they so wish to do. We do that in a number of different ways. So the first thing is we go and meet you. So we understand that sometimes travel can be prohibitive for many reasons, whether it's geographically prohibitive or costly, et cetera, et cetera. So we really enjoy hitting the road and doing outreach and recruitment and meeting not only students, but counselors, families, et cetera. It's been really exciting. This past year, we've gone all over the place. We've gone to the Dakotas. We're always in the Northeast, in the South, Texas, just you name it. We've probably stamped our feet there and kind of created some awesome connections. So that is one thing that we really, really enjoy doing. In addition to that, we are also really interested in inviting you all to our campuses. So we have launched a number of different programs, whether they are counselor fly-in programs, whether they are programs for students to come and visit college campuses with one of our member schools. But that's something that we're really, really proud of. When students and counselors come to our programs, we're able to have workshops and activities. You get to meet other folks from across the country. It's just a really, really special opportunity. So if that's something that you're interested in, I highly encourage you all to visit starscollegenetwork.org and click on events to see how you can apply and potentially come and see us on our own respective campuses. And then also, of course, we're doing what we're doing right now, which is virtual programming. We have a number of different webinars. We host at least one webinar every month. You can find previous sessions on our YouTube channel, so I hope you subscribe to that. There are a number of different topics that we discuss, whether that is mock applications and case studies, whether that is conversations about financial aid, we also, just like this, rural faculty voices. So there are a number of different topics that we cover to help students understand the college process firsthand from our own voices and experiences. So I highly encourage you to check that out. In addition to that, we've also created some wonderful partnerships to help students fortify their knowledge. So we have a partnership with Khan Academy and Schoolhouse.world, where you're able to engage in learning, gain certifications, master proficiency in subjects that might not be offered at your school. And a lot of the STAR schools also take that into account. And we recognize that in your applications so that you can showcase proficiency in subjects that you want to that you've taken, a lot of effort to learn. And in some cases, some of our schools require those subjects as well. So please check out those websites and resources. You can also access that through our starscollegenetwork.org website. And lastly, on-campus support systems. So we have since also established a number of different on-campus supports within our schools. We have college advisors that are also fixtures on our campuses that help facilitate connections between students that want to attend those respective schools. So that is something else that we're really, really proud of and also focused on expanding. So if that's something that you're interested in, again, our website is a great place to learn more about that as well. So we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. Welcome. My name is Melissa Rodriguez. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Caltech. I am also the STARS Program Director for Caltech. So it is my job to, again, oversee all of the recruitment and outreach that Caltech does in collaboration with other STARS schools. And I'd also love to introduce my colleague, Max.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for coming by this evening. And thank you, Melissa, for getting us kicked off. My name is Max Bartley. I work at the University of Chicago in Chicago, Illinois, as an assistant director of admission and also as the STARS program lead at the University of Chicago. One of the roles of being a lead at U Chicago is I get to host our fly-in program and many of our summer programs that we invite rural students from all over the country to. And I am incredibly glad that Leela Brahmer was able to be here this evening, our faculty member, because Dr. Brahmer is oftentimes helping us out with those in-person programs as well. So if anything that you hear this evening sparks an interest from any of our faculty members, know that you oftentimes will have an opportunity to engage in person with very similar faculty members, and especially that will be the case if you choose to attend a STARS College Network school. But I'll hand things over to John.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa and Max. So yeah, my name is John Bates. I'm an assistant director at The Ohio State University. And while I'm not the specific STARS coordinator there, just filling in for the evening, I do work very closely with STARS students. I have a few different areas that have a lot of small town and rural students, so I work with them quite often. And we have a lot of different STARS network events that will happen at Ohio State too. So definitely be checking out our events website to see those advertised. But yeah, I will pass it back to Melissa.
Thank you, John. And now our illustrious guests of honor, I would love to introduce our actual rural faculty voices. I will go ahead and start with, I will go ahead and start with Dr. Scott Cushing.
Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cushing. I'm originally from West Virginia, and now I am an assistant professor of chemistry at Caltech.
Fabulous. And Dr. Layla?
Hey everyone. As Max noted, I'm here at the University of Chicago. I have been here for 7 years and now have moved into being the director of curriculum for the Forum for Free Inquiry and Expression, our flagship place where we're talking about the principles and practice of free expression and free inquiry, and I'm building a national network around that. I grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, which is the third largest city in South Dakota of 19,000 people. And so I'm happy to talk about my experience of moving from there to here.
Wonderful. And lastly, not least, Ty.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ty Shepfer. I'm on the faculty at Ohio State. I teach in our management and HR department. Been teaching since 2015. Hard to believe it's been 10 years. But prior to that, worked at Shell Oil Company for several years. And originally from a town called Zanesville, Ohio, a small town in southeastern Ohio. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of my experiences tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes. So as I mentioned, a really wonderful breadth of experiences here and representation from all over. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share so we can actually see everyone speaking as they're speaking about their experience. So one moment. All right. And so to go ahead and kick things off, I think it would be important to start at the beginning. So for our faculty panelists, if you would not mind sharing a little bit about yourself. So what was, where are you from? I know Dr. Layla already mentioned a little bit about that, but any insight on your small town upbringing? What were you like? What were the interests that you might have had? Did you already have kind of a notion of what it was that you were interested in? Did you dream of attending college? If so, did you have a college going culture or role models, things like that, as you were growing up before you attended college? If anyone wants to get started.
Sure, I can start us off, since I introduced myself first. So, as I said, I'm Scott. I'm from West Virginia, in the Charleston area, which is our largest city at a massive population, I think, of 50,000. But interacting, obviously, in the West Virginia rural environment still gives me a really good perspective on the changes that go on around these things. I originally did not know I would be a scientist, probably like many people here. I actually didn't even know what a PhD was or what a professor did when I was growing up. I instead had a really big mechanical aptitude for fixing things around the house, working on cars. I raced cars, so on and so forth. And that mechanical aptitude led my parents to encouraging me to go to college and something, whether it be chemistry, which I'd done a bit of carbon fiber work and grown an interest in chemistry, all the way to what I really wanted to do, being like an automotive engineer. But, I had an interesting experience when I went to college. I knew I wanted to keep working with my hands, but I did some tours of labs. And in one of the physics labs, I saw a laser and was like, shut down everything. This was so much cooler than a car. And ever since then, I have been working with lasers. I ended up doing a physics degree and part of a chemistry degree, did research the whole time. This was at West Virginia University. Ended up staying at West Virginia University for my PhD because of some personal reasons, mental health, and just relationship wise. Then I jumped all the way to a postdoc at Berkeley and now I'm at Caltech. But those fundamental experiences in what I now do is instrumentation science, but those fundamental lessons from working on cars and building things to building lasers to building large scale instruments now kind of really pillared on. But I had no idea I was going to do a PhD until my advisor told me as an undergrad I should be a PhD student.
I can tag in there. I went to college in my hometown at a college of less than 3,000 people because I didn't know how to do college. And all I knew is my parents expected me to go there and had no idea, I was a first generation college student, no idea how to do it. And I went to college to be a doctor because that was a profession I could identify, and I was a scientist at heart. And then I found my classes across the board in the humanities so fascinating, and I ended up spending more time researching in those areas. And I remember I was on the college quad going into my senior year, trying to figure out how to register. I didn't have advising. There weren't advisors at my college in the same way. And I could complete a major in 8 different places if I would apply myself, right? And I had a professor come by and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life. And she said, you should be a professor. And I'm like, what the heck is that? I don't know how to do that. And then I chose the area that I was the furthest from and ended up pursuing a college degree in rhetoric and going off to a master's degree and then a PhD in rhetoric and finding a place where I could study everything I wanted to study. But it was that one interaction with a professor who saw me that changed that path in ways that have changed my.
That's awesome. So I'll kind of build off of that. So again, Ty Shepfer, originally from Zanesville, Ohio, small town, and it was truly foundational to who I am, who I still am as a human being. Definitely humble beginnings, a lot of hard work and grit that you learn in kind of a small town stuck with me. I'll never forget coming to Ohio State, one of the biggest universities in the country, which was only 60 miles from Zanesville, but it exposed me to an entirely different world, a world that I had not been exposed to up until that point in my life. And I feel like I'm so indebted to Ohio State because it was really how I grew up and found uncovered opportunities that I never even knew existed. So different from the 2 other instructors on the line, I don't have my PhD. So after graduate school, went and worked in industry for a period of time, never ended up pursuing my PhD, but I'm a senior lecturer, and you'll find that in the instructor ranks within college, there's a couple of different routes. The most common that most people probably know is that PhD, but there's also a teaching track where you go work in industry for a period of time and you kind of bring those experiences into the classroom. What I'll say about my time at Ohio State is I started out as an accounting major. I learned what accountants do and uncovered that that wasn't for me, and quickly found human resources. So, team dynamics, how people are motivated to get work done. That's always been a fascination for me. And I did that in industry, and now I teach a bunch of classes in the field, and I absolutely love it.
That's excellent. You all brought up really, really wonderful points. I guess one question that I would have is, so now before we go into actually attending college, I think it's very interesting that you all, like Dr. Cushing, you kind of acknowledged you were a tinkerer, you were someone that wanted to be very kind of hands-on with what you wanted to do. Dr. Brommer, you mentioned you kind of acknowledged you were a scientist at heart at first before you went into just a little bit more of the humanities side of things. Did that happen before you attended college? I guess, like, what supports, Dr. Cushing, you mentioned your parents kind of, encouraging you to do that, but at a certain point, you also have to acknowledge that within yourself, like that kind of electing to take part in this new kind of arena that you are unfamiliar with. So what was that like? And were you amongst other folks, like other peers or friends, classmates that were doing the same thing? What did that kind of feel like at the time? Because I can speak for us now. I think that there's very much an uprising and a real trend in rural representation that's really becoming more of a spotlight, or there's more of a spotlight being shed on it. But was that the case for you all? I don't want to make assumptions, but I'm just curious what that looked like or felt like.
Yeah, I can say kind of quickly on my aspect. So at my school, we had a mixed college representation rate, but almost all of us went to West Virginia University. It was very rare not to. I think just due to some prevailing thoughts inside of West Virginia about leaving the state, small town type thinking, and also the tuition for a state college was relatively cheap. So that was kind of my option for college. Known from the beginning of high school, if I wanted to aim for something, it was for West Virginia University, our state school. As far as what kind of triggered me to want to go beyond my parents, I think I probably, like many of you in the audiences, just felt unsatisfied with what I was learning in high school. I just, I was requesting textbooks, requesting outside resources from my teachers, trying to fill in supplemental thoughts. And I think, going into college, one of my biggest thoughts was just I wanted to learn more.
I can tag in there. My dad was an appliance repair person, and I'm going to echo Ty. I learned everything I need to know about everything I do from my parents. And so I might have a PhD, but their ability to connect and make relationships with the communities and the ways that they did is the type of practice that I built in civic life, in campus life, in everything that I do. It is, I mean, it's absolutely tied back into creating those connections. So for me, the through line runs through. Sure, I have a PhD. Sure, I did the learning. Sure, I can cite all the great sources out there. But there's something about growing up in a small town and really learning about how to weave those connections that prepares you to make connections in college life. I might not have known how to do college, but I knew how to do community. And those are the same skills that have served me my entire life.
The one thing that I would add is, as I was thinking about college, I was really blessed with amazing parents who supported me and kind of pushed me in that direction. But transparently, what ultimately pulled me to Ohio State was I didn't want to be poor anymore. I wanted that upward kind of economic mobility. And I felt like college was the best option for me to make that happen. And I mean, quite truthfully, going to a school where you are going to be surrounded by a very diverse group of individuals, especially from a socioeconomics standpoint, it was difficult at first. I kind of felt like I didn't belong. I was trying to fit in. But after a couple of semesters, I started to also notice the advantages that come with being from a small town. You bring a unique perspective, just like everybody brings a unique perspective. And that kind of chip on your shoulder, at least the chip on my shoulder that I had, I think served me well in that I was willing to roll up my sleeves and work hard to differentiate myself from my peers.
Thank you all for those fantastic answers. And you all already answered the next question that I was going to ask, which was I was thinking a lot and actually writing out a couple extra questions about the skills that are honed from a rural background and upbringing. You guys already completely covered that. But as rural students, you have such essential perspectives to offer, and also have this ingenuity and grit, and sometimes that chip on your shoulder that makes you want to work even harder to seek out that success. And we're still thinking a little bit about the college experience throughout the next handful of questions as well. It sounds like you all have really hinted at some of your perspectives and answers to this question, but I have two questions. The first is, were you aware of that rural upbringing and perspective that you were offering in these very different settings? And if so, did you find yourself stumbling into situations of imposter syndrome or other challenges that you weren't necessarily aware you might encounter when you arrive at an academic environment? I'll very quickly speak about my own personal experience when I was asked to write a thesis for my psychology class. I chose to write an entire thesis about imposter phenomenon, not realizing that it was something that I had directly been working through as a rural student, and didn't end up making that connection until well after I had graduated. So the question really being, again, were you aware of that rural perspective that you were offering in these academic settings? And if so, do you have any challenges that you were working through?
Yeah, I think going to West Virginia University is interesting. You know, the point Ty just brought up. We were more homogenous in terms of the, I think, socioeconomic status, just because it was a state school for most of West Virginia. While there's a lot of students from out of states, we definitely grouped ourselves naturally, I think, into West Virginians. And but imposter syndrome that was probably reinforced by that scenario. Now that I think about it, really basically directed my career. You know, in addition to other, now I know, underlying mental health disorders, imposter syndrome basically kept me going to West Virginia University despite, you know, the fact I could have gone to another school. It kept me there for my PhD because I was too scared to leave the state. And I was afraid I would never then be able to achieve at another school because of my undergrad choices. And then it led me all the way to when I finally decided to break free and go to Berkeley. But moving from West Virginia to UC Berkeley probably reinforced more imposter syndrome at first than it fixed. But through the wonderful programs at a school like that, I learned to overcome it and learned to feel more natural as much as you can be. Even being a professor now, I still experience imposter syndrome daily. I once asked one of my Nobel Prize winning colleagues, not to like humble brag about Caltech, but one of our many colleagues there. But yeah, I asked him, I was like, well, after winning a Nobel Prize, do you finally feel like that relief, like you've made it? And they're like, no, because I could have won too. And I feel like just as a scientist, imposter syndrome sticks with you. It's something you have to learn to manage rather than necessarily get rid of.
I can tell again, I've been at many conferences where the best people in the field talk about how they still have imposter syndrome. So just a FYI, everyone has it and no one gets over it. For me, in my undergraduate institution, almost everybody was rural. And so we were all in the same boat. When I moved on to my master's and my PhD program, that's where I really saw, and I'm going to be honest about this, I saw that I didn't have the background that some of the other students in my master's, and particularly in my PhD program, had. They had much more exposure. They had much more things going on. And so I was playing catch up. But my undergraduate education, even though we weren't reading the breadth of work that my colleagues had read, prepared me with the habit of mind. And it's really about those habits of mind that you get prepared with that allowed me to play catch up, and not just play on their level, but excel in those experiences. And so just knowing that you can do it is the entire battle for me.
I would just echo what's already been said. I mean, certainly the imposter syndrome never truly goes away. I do think at least I have gotten a little bit better navigating it. But to Scott's point, every day I face certain things where it's like, gosh, I don't even belong in this room. I definitely experienced that when I arrived at Ohio State as a freshman. I had the feeling of being behind, trying to play catch up. But as I mentioned earlier, you start to find your stride when you find the right community. So, for those of you that are looking wherever you end up going to school, trying to find those allies around you that value you, that support you, and kind of pick you up is so important. And I was lucky early on at Ohio State to find a handful of those people. And I think that is what ultimately helped navigate me through the next few years.
And that offers a perfect segue to I'm curious. This can really be about your undergraduate experience, but also could include any graduate work that you ended up doing. I'm curious for you all, what supports or what aspects did you find most beneficial throughout your academic experiences? This could include things like community, but it could also include very practical things like going to office hours. When I was headed off to college, it took me at least a year and a half to figure out that office hours were also for me, and I could go meet with professors whenever they were available. But it took quite a bit of prompting from some faculty members specifically before making that connection and actually taking advantage of that resource. So I'm curious for you all if there were any other resources, opportunities, things that you took advantage of, or maybe even wish that you took advantage of earlier on in any academic path.
I think for me, beyond just friends, if you're interested in academic careers or non-academic careers, but where there is labs for certain professors really helped me. Getting involved, getting to see myself around undergraduates and graduate students really gave me like the confidence I knew that I could be a scientist. But it also gave me a very close support network, including having a professor who was always on my side.
I'm going to echo that and echo you, Max. Uh, and here's a little known secret about professors. We're all pretty lonely. Nobody comes to our office hours, and we are sitting there and we're free game. Go to the office hours, have us get to know you, have us answer any questions. Most of us, I can't talk about all of us, but most of us are happy to help in all the ways that are available. So come and see us. You can never go wrong just by even stopping by and introducing yourself to a professor. The other place that I found home was in student organizations. I just dove into that and I found people who were just as nerdy as I am about certain topics, and we would explore them and have all sorts of fun with that. And I will tell you one of my regrets, things I didn't know, because remember, I told you my college didn't have advising. I didn't know about study abroad. And I always recommend to every single student, find a semester, a quarter where you are going to study abroad. It is the time in the life that you're able to do it. As a professor, I've been able to study abroad with other students now. Go do it as a student. You'll never have that opportunity.
The only ad that I would provide is so when I arrived at Ohio State, I was determined to graduate without any college debt. I had quite a bit of help through scholarship, and I was really grateful for that. But I still had a long way to go to be able to cover my costs, so I had to get a job. And I got a campus job. And to the points that were made earlier, you can find that research lab, you can find work on campus that is actually relevant to your career. I stumbled into a job as the manager for our men's basketball team. I was truly the water boy for the basketball team, but it paid and it got me exposure to incredible people. I learned a lot about, so my background is in human resources. That was just a perfect environment to learn about how teams thrive, how teams fail, what coaches do that work, what coaches do that doesn't work. So I was working about 25 hours a week, getting paid, but also learning a lot. And that positioned me well when it was time to apply for internships and full-time jobs.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing those thoughts. And that's also a great transition into our next section. So oftentimes your experiences in undergrad open up things that you might not have realized were paths for you and kind of led you to where you are now. So we want to hear a little bit about what you're doing now. So if each of you could kind of talk to us a little bit about the research and work that you do, and then also share, how do you maintain connections with rural students on campus? So we know oftentimes when you have that rural identity, that's a big part of you, and you want to support, fellow students from rural backgrounds. Obviously, you're here on this video call, but what are other ways that you're supporting your rural students on campus?
Yeah, so my work now, working in the chemistry department, I'm what's called a physical chemist. I basically use lasers to create new scientific instrumentation. You can almost think of the field as trying to create the next MRI or the next, X-ray scan or something along those lines. We just tend to do our science on very fast, ultra fast timescales, as we call them, picoseconds, femtoseconds, so on and so forth. But those very short times and acronyms you probably haven't thought of outside of your science classes. But we try to basically understand how renewable energy systems like batteries and solar cells actually operate. What are their downfalls? How can we improve them on a very fundamental quantum mechanical level? How do these things operate? So that's what I'm doing now. In terms of maintaining connections, I think, Caltech is a smaller school, especially our undergrad population. So I tend to get to know, especially through Melissa, the undergrads that are coming in from these situations and stay in close contact with them through the STARS network. And at the grad level, we do put, especially when I'm hiring grad students, I put an emphasis on hiring people from schools that, you may not put on that top 10 list, but they show incredible scientific capability.
Um, my path, and it's a strange one, so maybe I'll just tell you where I arrived. I ended up, my previous institution, I was there for 21 years at a small liberal arts college in rural America. And I built out a public discourse and dialogue program where we worked with communities to deal with really pressing, challenging, divisive, stagnated issues and helping them move through them. And it was, for me, I'm a rhetorician. I was able to put what I knew about rhetoric and civic life and argument into practice that helped me essentially expand my theory. And that allowed me, because of some national recognitions, to come to the University of Chicago, where I've been charged with thinking about not just the principles of free expression, but how do we put them into practice? How do we seek and engage difference in disagreement in ways that we can expand our thinking and or create stronger arguments? And so that's my work across campus. That's my work externally with other colleges and with high schools across the nation. And for me, now that I'm not in the classroom as much in the school year, it's working with Max and others in the admission department and being in contact with the rural students who come through campus as pre-college programs. And then when they come to the University of Chicago, to be in contact with them and to be supportive in any way that I can in helping them further their own dreams.
So I mentioned earlier that I was working at Shell Oil prior to coming to Ohio State. And my last role, but before coming into academia, I was the HR manager for our Gulf of Mexico operation. So those big rigs that are floating out in the middle of the Gulf drilling for oil, most people don't know this, but there's 200, 300 people that work on those at any given time. And they're out there for sometimes 2 weeks, even a month at a time, working 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week. So very different work environment. I was constantly on a helicopter flying offshore. And for an HR person, that's pretty exciting work. I did enjoy it, but I was doing my goals for the following year. And it was about 7 years into my career. And I had this itching feeling that I was looking for something more, something with more impact. And I just loved the college experience. So I started trying to get a role specifically at Ohio State, and eventually they hired me and brought me back. So I teach a bunch of HR courses now. HR and leadership is kind of my background. I teach at the undergrad, masters, and also even companies, local companies will do some work for as well. I love that about my role because I do get a lot of variety. I have one class of 1,200 students. I also have classes of 20 to 30 students. So that gives me a ton of variety as well. I'll say for the connection to rural students, I love sharing my background on the very first class of the semester and just welcoming that invitation. To the point that was made earlier, go to office hours. I love when students come to office hours and they don't even have any content questions about the class. They just want to chat about life. And I learn from them just as much, hopefully, as that they learn from me. And you can build relationships in that way. I'll say specifically for folks from rural America, we tend to want to help each other. So use that to your advantage. Like when you see people that were in similar backgrounds than you, reach out to them, try to build a connection, and most people are more than willing to help.
And with that word of advice, that leads us into our final question. So before we get into the Q&A from the students in the audience, we'd love to hear what words of advice you have for students joining tonight. If there any things that you would have told your past self, thinking about applying to college or thinking about college, and maybe also, how to emphasize rural identity as a strength in both that college application process and in attendance.
I think for me, if I was going to give myself some past advice, it would be to believe in the ingenuity I was showing, I guess, in a more rural centric way of working on cars, working on houses, doing all these types of things, but taking that ingenuity and translating that into applications, translating into where I could be, that those skill sets and teaching myself how to think from self-study was just as valuable as perhaps some people from different places in America that had more access to educational training, working abroad type resources that you always see on college applications.
I can double down on that again, Scott. For sure. I didn't have a rural identity until I went somewhere that didn't have a rural identity, and I realized that I was indeed a rural student who had something to add that no one else was seeing. If I had to give myself advice, I would give myself the advice to lean into that hard and strong from the beginning. My rural identity is the thing that has made me who I am. It is the through line of my story. And two, to never doubt myself, that despite other people's education, I have something to add and an ingenuity in my thinking that they do not have, and to really lean into that as well.
Yeah, the community oriented mindset from most people from rural America is a powerful one that you can certainly use to your advantage. I grew up in a household where my mother would drag me down the street to the new neighbor that was moving in to introduce ourselves and say hi. And I hated that at the time, but that did start to define who I am. And I carried that with me into college, and it helped me build relationships with people that were very different from me. So you're going to find that. So I encourage all of you, take the risks now, apply to a lot of schools, go visit a lot of schools, see what you think fits, and just be open and nimble to change, because time will give you more experience. And with that experience, you're just able to make more informed decisions about your future.
Such fabulous advice to wrap up on. And that's really nice also, because that's something that we always communicate on the admission side of things. I'm sure Max and John would agree with me when we say, we're extremely excited about the rural representation that we have on our campus. Students coming from small town backgrounds exhibit the same tenacity and talent that we want on college campuses, but the way that they exhibit them is just in such a unique just special, different, refreshing way. So to all of you that are here in attendance listening, believe that, like they're telling you right now, like it really is something that we appreciate and celebrate and we want to see more of. So please don't doubt yourself. I was very fascinated by the imposter syndrome discussion that was happening earlier. But all of those qualities of being collaborative and relying on your network, believing in your ingenuity, being resilient and adaptable, and taking risks, all of those things will only reward you and get you further and closer to what it is you want to do. And that is what STARS believes in as well. And we want to help support you in that pursuit as well. So thank you so much for all of that insight. Just scrolling through some of the questions here, I'm not sure if there's any last things that there are some that are kind of college specific. So if you'd like to reach out to any one of us, we can help facilitate those answers for you on the side. But otherwise, this has been an absolutely fabulous conversation. Thank you so much to our faculty panelists for your insight and experiences, expertise, and just support. It has been absolutely wonderful to have you here. And I hope that this will continue in the future as well. Thank you to my colleagues, Max and John, as well. For the folks in attendance, again, please visit the starscollegenetwork.org page. We have resources, events. If you're interested, again, in joining our fly-in programs, all of that information is available there. But I will go ahead and wrap things up for today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Dr. Scott. Thank you, Dr. Layla. Thank you, Ty, for all of your insight. And to everyone, have a wonderful rest of your evening or day or morning, wherever it is that you are. And until next time, thank you so much.